Oh, hi. I got there at last. Yeah. Oh, took a bit of time, that, didn't it? Yeah. So, welcome to the Thanks. So, for Dan. Ah, yeah, Dan Civico. Calling it on. That's right. And studios, yeah. Yeah. So, the first question is, what made you and Jack decide to start and plus studios? Well, so Jack's one of my ex-students, and he was in his final year when lockdown happened. Um, and Jack and I had got a bit of an affinity going between us anyway. We've got the sort of same tastes in all everything design, music wise. Um, I'd been on trips with all my students a couple of times, and it was always me and Jack that were hanging at the back taking photographs of architecture. So we got this little affinity built up, and then I've always had a business like for the last 25 years or so. Um, and then when lockdown happened, obviously everything changed. It was 4 weeks before they finished, and Jack basically started to prod me and started to say, set up a business with me, set up a business with me, which I said no for ages. And then I agreed to be his mentor. And then I just decided that actually it was right to set up a business with him. And I had um, one thing to say is that it had to be called Ant Studios because I had this idea of it like being furniture and architecture and interiors and products. So, and it started with me being more or less Jack's mentor and a bit of a silent partner because I was still lecturing full time. Um, so then we're 3 years down the line now. I only teach very part time now, and the business is going from strength to strength. So the long and short answer is Jack made me. Where do you go to find inspiration for your work and interior design project? Yeah, well, I think I just touched on that a little bit there. 100% my biggest influence is architecture, and the exterior of buildings and interiors of buildings as well, but it's primarily architecture. And that's the same for Jack as well. And we both have an affinity for brutalist buildings. So I absolutely love concrete buildings from the 1960s. Um, in Luda, I mean, I've been in Newcastle now for over 30 years, and the Trinity car park used to be over in Gateshead. It was one of my favourite buildings ever. But I'm from Sheffield, and Sheffield's got the largest listed structure in Europe, Park Hill Flats, which is at the end of my parents' street, which is a brutalist building, which I delivered my great auntie's tea to from when I was 14 to 18. She had dementia, so I went inside this building every day of the week for a good 4 or 5 years. So I think I keep coming back to that. So brutalism, architecture, traveling a lot, even just from city to city. I'm obsessed with taking photographs of the everyday. Um, do lots of walking around. So they're the main points. So not interiors at all. But everything to do with anything cultural. So I go to lots of exhibitions, talks, galleries, whatever I can find really that I think's creative. Go and see lots of graffiti, street art, and all of those things. Um, and I think it's just anything really. I'm like immersed in the whole thing. Just everyday things as well. But then also for work, me and Jack spend a lot of time on Instagram, and that is the single best place to see the biggest variety, the most up to date stuff. Um, from contemporary art to fashion to photography to graphics, the whole lot really, everything. So yeah, I find inspiration in lots of things. Constantly looking for it. Tend to walk different ways as well. If I walk anywhere, I try and walk different ways and see different things. And I went through a process once of about 3 years of taking at least 10 photographs every single day. And I still take a lot of photographs every day. Um, again, of everyday things. So they're my inspiration, really. I also take a lot of photos. I think it's really important. I think not just the subject matter of what you're taking the photograph of, but I think in terms of seeing the world through a lens and actually the composition of the photograph that you're taking. and getting the photograph square, having that eye for detail, every millimeter counts, getting verticals, horizontals right, getting the proportions right, and all of those things. I think it just makes you a better designer, probably even better in graphics,
Yeah,
because every millimeter
because
counts.
then you can it's any patterns you see or anything like that.
Yeah, yeah, patterns, rhythm, textures, light, you know,
Type of
atmosphere. Yeah, this all relates to typography as well. Yeah, so I love typography too, and I love graphic design. Bibliotech are one of my favourite graphic design houses. Tim Beard runs those. Another guy that's called Build. They're my favourite graphics people, I think. So yeah, graphics is great. It's hard. It's a hard subject to get right.
also what helps is sticking things in a sketchbook so cut stuff out and just sticking it.
Yeah, I'm a massive fan of a sketchbook. I've always got a sketchbook on me, although my use of a sketchbook has changed over the years, probably because I don't have as much time now. So my sketchbooks are very scrappy, very scribbly, and they've got a lot of writing in them and a lot of figuring out. Whereas before I used to sit, and draw things in my sketchbook and really kind of sit with them for hours at a time. But I don't have the time to do that now. So I have a sketchbook with me every day. Um, and also I've started drawing on my iPad as well, which I'm not very good at because I'm too old to work technology. But but yeah, so yeah, I use Sketchbook every day.
So you within design has been your biggest influence on how you design and keep.
There's not one single person or one single thing. However, in the whole zeitgeist of the world, I truly believe that the Bauhaus, namely Walter Gropius, has been the biggest influence on the design community across the globe. Period. Setting up the Bauhaus in 1911 or 1914, whenever it was set up, Walter Gropius had this vision of teaching design to the masses, and actually, design education has not actually changed very much since then. So I think we all owe it to Walter Gropius about the influence he's had on the design world as a whole. However, the biggest influence potentially on me in teaching per se was that I was actually really badly behaved at school. So I got thrown out of school 3 times, wasn't actually allowed to stay at my school, had to move on somewhere else. And I was a very difficult person to teach. And I still felt like I deserved a chance. So I've worked and taught in lots of different environments. I did a residency in Low Newton Prison for 6 months. I've done residencies with young offenders, like working with the people that, haven't necessarily had the right chances in life. So I think in terms of me, what drives me forward with teaching, it's that giving the everyday person the opportunity to do something creative. And I think they're the true creatives, the people that, haven't been brought up in a creative environment at home. It doesn't mean that they're not entitled to have that sort of, that chance. But also as well, I think for me, my biggest influence on design and teaching is just immersing myself in everything cultural. And I literally, it's something within me drives me forward to do that. And I don't think it's through a choice. I think it's just, how I am. In terms of other sort of design heroes, again, it goes back to architecture. So Corbusier, who I really like designers that have come up with a certain set of rules that they abide by, because I think that takes a lot of thinking. I'm quite a deep thinker. So Corbusier, he's got 5 rules about how to build residential properties. Mies van der Rohe, again, these are all from the like 1920s. Mies van der Rohe came up with the concept of skyscrapers, which absolutely blows my mind. It's probably one of the biggest accolades ever. But other people as well, more into the 20th century, like Dieter Rams, who again came up with a set of rules, which I think are excellent to work to. So yeah, quite a range of things really, not one single thing. But if I was going to say one thing, it would be Bauhaus and Walter Gropius.
Working on Bauhaus fundamentals.
Yeah, I mean, I love the whole concept of Bauhaus.
Was it redesigning it, trying to modernize it. So using more hexagons and so
Yeah, yeah.
short highlight.
Have you tried the game of rearranging and using the primary colours? for the square, circle, and the triangle. So Walter Gropius, and when I used to do loads of like art and design workshops with young offenders or whatever else, I used to start with a square, circle, and a triangle. And Walter Gropius said that these were the building blocks of all modern design, and they're in the primary colours, so you can mix any colour you want. So I basically, in my sketchbook back in the day, I used to draw a square, a circle, and a triangle in different formations repeatedly over and over and over and over and over and over again. Because I thought you could actually get to anything. So anyone that thinks they can't draw or not creative, if you can draw a square, a circle, and a triangle, and you can compose them in different ways, then you can probably design anything in the world. I actually did a homage to it in about 2010. I actually made neon ones and installed them on the side of the fire station in town. And they took up the whole facade of the fire station. They were like 10 meters by 10 meters square. So yeah, Walter Gropius is the man.
So what are your thoughts on the rise of AI within design and interior design?
So Jack and I are working on a project at the minute, designing a pizzeria for ice cream for pizza in Sunderland, a new development there. uh, at the Sheepfolds. So the Sheepfolds is an old stable, which is a listed building, which we're working in. But the project's a much wider project. So where we're working, there's like 5 different restaurants. There's a bar, there's a distillery, there's a brewery, there's a dance studio, and then there's going to be 300 houses built on the site as well. And there's a big bridge there. So it's quite a big development. So Scream for Pizza approached us and asked us to replicate. They've already got 2 other restaurants to replicate one of those, and they showed us some images from sort of their classic New York diner pizzeria type restaurants, which we liked, but we didn't want to create a pastiche on something. So we were like, right, let's have a laugh. Let's go online and let's type some stuff in. We tried a few AI packages to see what it came up with. And so I suppose we were influenced to some extent, but I think AI should be called artificial stupidity because it doesn't know what it's doing, and it's too early in the day, which is actually quite creative. Uh, it doesn't need to know what it's doing particularly, but it's got a good way of generating different things. So we actually sat there for like 2 hours and typed in loads of different stuff and see what it came up with. But it can't arrange an interior. But we did see some things that we were just like, all right, I wouldn't have thought of that. So we did have some influence, I would say. Still did have some influence on this interior to some extent. And we did have a play around with it. So that was quite interesting. My thoughts on the rise of AI in general, though, is that I'm torn between it being a utopian dream on the start of World War III, because I've got 2 kids, right? And my youngest kid, who's 9 years old, questions every day why he has to go to school for 5 days and he only gets 2 days at the weekend. He's like, why can't I go to school for 4 days and have 3 days? Or even better, 3 days at school and like 4 days leisure time. And ultimately, this is where AI should get us to. It should get us to the point where we don't have to work every single day. AI is going to take jobs away from us, but that needs to be replaced with a universal basic income. So in a utopian world, if AI is going to take jobs away from us, and then we have to be given money because we have to spend money to keep society ticking over. So if that is the case, and AI does all these jobs and it does them brilliantly, better than we can do, then let it do it. But give us a universal basic income so we can still operate and the world can still tick. The problem is that all these people at the top of the food chain are just greedy fat cats that, are they ever going to do that? It's doubtful. Finland has already got universal basic income. It's already being trialed here. So potentially AI as a concept should change the world for better. Whether it will or not is a different thing. In terms of the visual world, the aesthetic world, it's 100% going to change the look and feel of the planet. It already is changing it in architecture. Architecture's starting to turn into these shapes and forms that we couldn't probably imagine in our wildest dreams, in combination of materials and building processes as well, because AI can regurgitate things better than us. I heard a really interesting podcast from Charlie Brooker, the guy that wrote Black Mirror. Charlie Brooker was talking about how AI is going to affect writers specifically. And they were asking him if he had a fear about it. And he was saying his feelings were a bit mixed, but he's saying all AI does, he named it the big sausage. And he said all AI does, it goes onto the internet, albeit really quickly. It takes all this meat, it mashes it all up and spits it out in a different form. And he said, and that's all it does. Doesn't come up with anything new, doesn't rewrite any rules. It doesn't, and it's only data, and it doesn't really know whether the data it's collecting is like correct or not because it comes from wherever on the internet.
So it doesn't know about like principles and sort of
It doesn't know about truth, and this is where the problem lies with AI. AI it's got no kind of reckoning about whether something's true or not. So if you search something and ask Google a question, right, 9 times out of 10, Wikipedia is going to be at the top, right? Wikipedia is not truthful. It's an open source web page that you can change anything. I think Boris Johnson's web page on it is hilarious because it's completely incorrect and rightly so. So AI, I think, is going to be amazing. If it gets into the hands of the wrong people, it could go wrong. It shouldn't really go wrong. It might change the face of how the planet looks and actually how we work and how much of a better work-life balance we could have. So
I think the only way maybe be a bit risky is if it got into the hands of like hackers or people like that. And they,
it's gonna though, isn't it?
yeah.
So
Because if it can get like bank account details and all that kind of thing.
I mean, that's happening already. I've also heard there's a lady that's on Radio 6, like every Wednesday morning or something. I forget what her name is, but she's actually an AI specialist, and she was saying that all AI that's being developed now has to be developed in prison-like settings because they can't let those machines loose, even on their own, because they actually start becoming more and more intelligent all the time. The guy that worked for Google that said that he started to get an affinity with some of his AI, and he basically said they started to actually gain intelligence on their own. He got sacked instantly, didn't he? So, and this is only the AI that we know. Whatever the military's got and their AI will be crazy. But if you look towards anything like medical stuff, I bet in the future, I bet we'll be able to cure cancers quicker, be able to do all those things, and the advancement of the human race will be quicker through AI. But we just need to take care that it doesn't go wrong and World War III happens. Who knows?
I think we covered
Yeah,
through.
yeah. Whatever you want to jump to.
So, what is your favorite 3D software design, and what are some useful tips you have learned?
So my first tip is that for me, right, I'm proper old school. Like when I went to uni, we didn't have any computers. So 3D software to designing is, to me, a little bit backward because I don't think you design on a computer. I think you design with a pencil and your brain and lots of thought and a sketchbook and then translate it. And but I mean, saying it's not a design platform is not entirely true, but it's got a different way. So if you want to design something quickly and come up with a lot of concepts, the quickest way to do that is with a pencil on some paper and just go for it and try it. I used to do a thing with my students called the Design Olympics, and we used to do some really, really fast sketching on. We used to set them 10 different design briefs, which they had to complete in 1 minute each, or to try and get some ideas out. But then once you've got all these bones of ideas, then you can start kind of refining them. And then when you want to start to work out the actual real particular details of it and the dimensions, proportions, then you go on to the software and then you start to go, wow, I need to see this in real size. So after I've got through that stage, I work on SketchUp absolutely solidly every single day of the week. Me and Jack at work draw in 3D all the time. So we find I used to teach AutoCAD. In fact, I taught Nexus, the metro company, to work AutoCAD. And more so, I've actually just done a load of work on AutoCAD recently, and I haven't worked on it for a long time. And I've forgotten how frustrating and how archaic it feels drawing in a 2D platform, quite complicated things that people on first look can't make head or tail of. And if you show them a 3D drawing, that you can actually give them a walkthrough. Like it's just it doesn't make any sense to be drawn in cards. So I use SketchUp every single day of the week. Me and Jack build in SketchUp like you build in reality. So we draw every single element so we can cut sections through things. We can give builders like full specs. Like I've just done a massive lighting plan for Screen for Pizza, which is it's part old building, part new building, encompasses two spaces. It tells you every single light fitting, every single cable tray, all the routes like to the absolute millimeter, and you can have a walkthrough, so you wouldn't actually have to visit the space to understand how it works. So SketchUp is our absolute bread and butter. Um, I'm terrible on the whole Adobe suite, but I do use Illustrator the most for laying things out. Jack's like a digital genius, so he uses Illustrator every day of the week. Um, we don't really tend to use much more of the Adobe package. We might use InDesign sometimes, not very often. We also use a bit of V-Ray, so a bit of photoreal stuff. But again, I'm not a fan of photoreal work. I think it's soulless. I think to be really good at it, you have to invest a lot of time. Like, I don't understand this concept of creating something that's photoreal, but you can tell it's not real. So then it's not photoreal, is it? And then it lines you up to fail with clients because you hand over this final project which hasn't been constructed. Here it is. And then when they get it, they're like, this is not perfectly the same as I thought. So I think it lines you up. So I much prefer like an illustrative sort of final outcome, which Jack's like brilliant at doing.
Has more of like a style to
The
it.
something that's styled.
Yeah.
And again, if you go and look on Instagram at lots of architectural practices and interior practices, the best ones have got like these really lovely stylized illustrations that might have come from something like SketchUp or a 3D package, but somebody spent the time to make it look like it's idiosyncratic or it's got a certain look and feel and a style. And I think people buy into that much more rather than a cold image that doesn't quite look real. So yeah, so SketchUp, and more SketchUp.
What is the best way of working with a client? Like, how do you write proposals for their project?
Yeah, so in terms of the proposals we have for our projects, we get invited on all of our projects. So we don't go out searching for work. They all come to us. That said, right, so our clients are both commercial and residential, and we treat them in two quite different ways. So on the commercial projects that we have, like Screen for Pizza or the Farrell Centre we've just done, or we've just done a bookshop or a bar, we tend to try and, get under the skin of the clients and understand what they might want. But most of the time, clients actually don't know what they want. So the bookshop, for example, we were specifically told not to use any plywood in it, no sheet material at all. And ironically, the bookshop is all plywood, all like literally all of it, and they absolutely love it. So there's lots of ways. So on our commercial projects, we tend to work really hard with our clients, and I think that means you have to build a really good rapport with them. You have to get under the skin of what they might want. You have to make them a bit more knowledgeable. You have to get them to understand things. I think it was just naivety why the client was saying they didn't want to apply it, because they didn't understand the treatment. So you need to give them what they don't know they want. So that's the first thing. The second thing for me is if a client gives you a brief and you follow that brief to the letter, it will only lead to disappointment from your client. Because they will turn around, particularly with AI, particularly in interiors, they will turn around and tell you they could have done that.
Yeah,
So the big thing for me is knowing where to break the rules.
yeah,
So with with Jack as well, Jack, because he's younger than me and he's not got as much experience for the library for the bookshop, Jack was like, "We can't use ply," and I'm like, "We're going to use ply," and he's like, "They've specifically said no," and I'm like, "It's just because they don't know." So we started feeding bits of ply to them and showing them different treatments, and then designing one little bit, then another bit, and then showing them how it all should come together. So it was kind of like breaking those initial rules or knowing what the way in was to kind of and deliver something that in the wildest dreams they didn't imagine they were going to get. And I think it's really successful and it's really quite different to So the last project we did before that was a bar in Eton, which is it's green and pink and it's very bright. And this is just all white and it's very, very subtle and it's quite sparse. So the two quite different things. Um, I have a mantra. I have a mantra that I've had with my students since I've been teaching here, which is 20 years, which is bravery and punk spirit. And bravery and punk spirit comes a little bit from myself at school, being a bit of an anarchist and this idea of breaking rules. So being a bit punk is like, right, you need to know which rules to break. And I'm not talking about rules about being late or, being a dick or anything like that. It's rules about actually what can I throw in the mixer to deliver something that you know you're going to get. So to do that, you have to be pretty brave and confident. And to get that over the line, you have to have loads of energy. So that's the idea. Be brave, be confident, break some rules, be a bit of an anarchist, but actually have the spirit to carry it off. And like be confident that you're gonna be able to do that. We've won so much work, and I've won so much work over the last 25 years, and I've actually got the job, and then I've gone, shit, I actually don't know how to do this. And you go, ah, but you can always figure it out, and it's just a matter of spending time on it and getting it right. So yeah, I think get the best thing to do with clients is get under the skin, make them your mate, like get build a rapport with them, like get. And Jack is particularly good at doing this. He's very very good. In fact, on a lot of our residential projects. So actually, the difference between a commercial and residential ones, right? Once we've got the concept for a commercial project, we don't let the client make any decisions. We literally say no. We say this is what you're getting. If you want to change something, come to us. We'll agree it or not. So that's the first thing. On a residential project where the client's got to live in it, we go in and say, look, this is your house. We're going to help you understand what you want. And we work with clients and we try not to make any decisions ourselves. We try and get them to make them all, which is very difficult. But Jack's actually really good at doing that in a residential setting and actually stopped talking to me after a bit. I just talked to Jack. So yeah,
I think similar with design, just analyzing what they've got and taking the words that they've got from the brief and sort of linking it to the finalized sort of style of
I'm a really, really big thinker and I think about things a lot. And I'm not happy till it's got to a place where I'm all about concepts. So the concept's really nice and neat. And that every question that comes up, either from yourself, from the client, you can just go back to that concept and that answers your question. And if it doesn't, then it either doesn't work for whatever they're asking or whatever you're thinking doesn't work for the project. So it's an easy yes or no, or the concept's not quite right. So once you've nailed the concept, which doesn't take any drawing or anything, it's just loads of thought, then you've got something that can answer everything, and then everything seems to slot into place much easier. But to get to that point can often take quite a lot of thinking. But yeah, it's a good place to be.
one. I think we'll cover that as well.
Yeah, I think so. I think maybe to some extent. So when working on a project, I
Yeah.
think that really helps the project go smoothly once you've nailed down a concept, because it's like you've made your brief, well, all of a sudden you've made it this small. So then it's really easy to answer the questions. The other thing I'm going to say though is, particularly in interiors and architecture, because there's so many facets to it, it never goes smoothly.
Yeah.
And there's always, and this is something for students, right? Get used to making a million changes. If you think your design's finished, it isn't because it's never finished. And so Scream for Pizza, I think we're on iteration like 37 or whatever of the interior. And it's not massive changes, but we just keep having to go back in and change it again and change it again. Like when working with students, sometimes fast, if give them some feedback and say, look, this bit needs altering, and then they don't do it. I'm like, well, this is how it works in reality. Like, there's always a million changes. Get used to it. Like, make the changes, crack on with the next bit. It'll just continue to refine your design. It'll get better and better and better. And you can keep doing that forever. But the only thing that stops you is a deadline.
Yeah. So it helps you to know a client and what they are looking for when you're working on a project.
So we go in, right? Initially, we get together what we call a long list of images. And they, like, if we're designing an interior, for example, the images might be we might show them 50 images at first, and there might be a whole host of things. Some things that allude to what they've suggested they might want. Some things that allude to some things that we've seen, like maybe some primary research, maybe some secondary research from here, there, and everywhere. Some things might just be to do with materials. Some things might be to do with forms, shapes. And we sit down with clients and we just talk through the images and we say, look, we've selected this one because, and trying to discard them. So we try and boil those down. It's probably between 30 and 50 images normally. We try and boil those down to a handful. And then from there, we feel like we've got under the skin of them. So after that, we do a refined searches and then try to work with them from there and to show those to a client and go, right, how's this? And they're like, you could see in the face, they're like, oh, wow, yeah, I didn't think of that. Don't like that. Don't like that. And just this visual process seems to give them like, once you get on the same page together, it makes it much easier. The other thing we do always is we offer them umpteen iterations. So we don't just go and say, there's your design. We go and say, right, here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is why we've done this one. This is why we've done this one. This is why we've done this one. In interiors, me and Jack white box things first. We don't show any colours, any textures, anything. We work on floor plans and layouts first.
So that like sort of a wireframe or like a
Yeah,
website.
exactly. Just something that's completely devoid of colour. It's just about how the layout works, proportion, form. Like once we've got that right, we then start populating it with colours, which actually might change some of the layout as well, because some things don't then work. But we always go in that way, and we always give clients multiple iterations. Don't get me wrong, we've always got one in mind that we probably want to take forward. But sometimes, and not always, sometimes clients do come up with some good ideas as well. It's not actually very often, but they do, which kind of go brilliant. Yeah, we'll throw that in. But yeah, I think that's how to work with them. And again, just to go back to what I was saying before about commercial and residential clients. Once we've got our right idea and concept locked down with commercial clients, we tend to railroad the project. Like literally, this is what you're getting. Like there's no backing down on this. This is absolutely right. And that sometimes forces some discussions when they ask us to do X, Y, Z, and we basically say we don't think that's right. On residential ones, like it's more difficult because we're trying to get them to make up their minds. But generally, though, that helps to build rapport, like helps to move it on as well. Try to empower our clients to make the decisions themselves, particularly residential clients.
Yeah. Final question is, what's one actionable step students can take to get better at working with clients, either doing work for other students or commercial clients?
So this is the big number one thing that anybody in the design industry, especially in the Northeast, because it's 1 degree of separation, right? If you don't know the person you're talking to, you know someone that they know, or they know someone else in the business, right? Number one thing, you have to be nice. Like, I could almost stop there. You have to be really nice. You have to be flexible. You have to be hardworking. Like, you have to turn up on time. You have to put the hours in. You can't moan. If someone gives you feedback, take on the advice. Like, every day's a learning day. Be really humble about and appreciative. Like, we've just been invited to do this Farrell Centre, like, exhibition, and we're like blown away. I've been doing this for 30 years and I'm still like, incredibly flattered that I've been asked to do it. And we're busting the guts to do everything we can. Like what I was saying before about repeating yourself. So I've had students before that have gone on placements and they've been asked to repeat a mood board, let's say, 3 times. And on the third time, they start to get a bit upset being asked to do it again. Just do it again. Do it again and then do it again and just start trying to understand why you're being asked to do it again. They're not saying you've done it wrong. They're basically just saying, oh, this bit's starting to work. Like, work some more into it. So, number one, be nice, smile, be flexible, work hard, be humble, take advice, be prepared to repeat yourself over and over and over and over and over and over again. Because that's the only way you get good. Here's an analogy about it, and I'm not saying anyone's like a child, but I always say to my kids, right, when they get frustrated they can't do something, like tie the shoelaces or draw something properly, and they have 2 goes and they stop. I'm like, how long did it take you to write your name? And they always go, what? And I'm like, how many attempts do you think you had to have to be able to write your name? And they're like, don't know, thousands. And I'm like, oh, probably. And how well can you write your name now? Do you write it without thinking? Yeah, there you go. That's what you have to do to be able to do anything. If something is the most basic requirement for writing your name. To get any good at anything, repeat it, repeat it, repeat it, refine it, repeat, refine, repeat, then you'll get really good. And you can do it to anything, even stuff that you don't know about. You can get better and better all the time. So yeah, constant refinement, self evaluation, reflection. So yeah, that's about it really.
Any questions from you that
No, just saying thanks for inviting us to come and do this. I think it's been a great experience. Always quite like these things. I'm constantly saying to my students that working in isolation is not great, and you might be able to look at your work and evaluate it in your own head, and have a conversation with yourself about it. But actually, it's not until you actually vocalize it and you start speaking to somebody else about it that actually you can realize something. And I've done this myself. Like I've been working on a project and I've gone to show it to a client, and halfway through saying something, I've either realized I could have done something better or I shouldn't have done something. So nearly all the time when me and Jack go to a client meeting, I tend to end up like just saying to her, Jack, right, this is what I'm going to say, just so it comes out of my mouth. And then I actually tend to refine the design a bit more. So certainly with students, like, don't work in isolation. Like, talk to one another. I set up like proper peer-to-peer discussions, but some of the students struggle to see the value in it. And I'm like, once something comes out of your mouth and you affirm it, like the spoken word makes a difference in you designing it. It will either make it stronger or weaker, or you'll realize something. But the more you talk as well, the better you get at doing it. The more your vocabulary goes, the more you get authority in your voice, the more you feel confident. So again, it's really important. Being a designer is not just about being good at design. It's a whole polymath of stuff that you have to be able to do well. It's quite a complicated area.
I definitely will work more on sort of being less sort of just myself. Sort of work on those more.
You've got good at getting yourself out there, though. Yeah,
Yeah.
you've got me on board, which is good. You work with one of my students. I love this idea of community of students, right? Because you guys are the future, right? You should all just be getting together, and then all going off and doing your things and keeping in touch. Because you're going to be the next generation, so you're going to make, I don't know, 50 contacts. One of the other students is going to make 50 contacts. And if there's 50 of you, my maths is crap. But that's a lot. That's a lot of contacts, right? So already, this is your network, and this is where it starts. I always build my final year, level 6, as being the first year of being a professional, not the last year of being a student. And I think it's good. People like yourself are doing stuff like this, so well done.
Thanks for covering that. I think that's us done.
Great.
Cheers.